Welcome to another CEO Wisdom Pod. We have Max Rivest with us today. He is co-founder and CEO at Wize Tea. We're going to discuss these. We're going to discuss the beautiful sparkling iced teas that I see here that I will very much consume next time I'm in Canada. Max is in Vancouver, BC, spent some time down in Nicaragua. Really cool guy. Has a background in hockey. And he's Canadian. He's also French. His mom's French. We're gonna discuss about the whole variety of stuff. I'd love to start my coffee business eventually down here in Mexico. So I guess we'll discuss about that too. This podcast is brought to you by podfire.com. If you want to start, scale, be invited to podcasts like this one, find sponsors and everything in between. Max, I am really glad to have you on. Can you tell us a bit more about yourself and about Wize Tea?
Yeah, so I grew up in Vancouver. I was an athlete, just everything from hockey to every type of board sport, mountain biking, etc. Just super, super active person. And I always was frustrated with the beverage options available at basically the gas station. Because in most cases, when you're doing so many activities, whatever, the gas station is like 90% of the time, that's where you're getting your like quick hydration, right? Or even if you're out and about and you're on a bike somewhere, you're like, oh, look, this gas station, I'll get a drink. And everything is, this was back when I was like 15 years old, when like Monster and Red Bull started reaching Canada. I remember drinking a Monster Energy for the first time before hockey tryouts. And it was the worst thing I ever did. I was like, I'll never drink energy drinks again. Like, these are just honestly poison. And I'm glad I never did, but I tried to find other alternatives over years and years. And I was always drinking the sweet tea that you get in bottles like Nestea, whatever. When I got to university, I realized that every bottle of iced tea I was drinking, which I was drinking two a day, every single bottle is 45 grams of sugar. And I was like, dude, that's almost 100 grams of sugar per day. And so I quit that and I went to coffee, because at least coffee, you can get it black. There's coffee's kind of available everywhere, and maybe not in a ready to drink, but you can always get it in the same places. So we get black coffee, and then kind of fell down the trap of like drinking excessive amounts of it and really relying on it in my early professional life after school. And then when I hated my job in Vancouver, I sold everything I owned and I went to Bordeaux in France to get a master's of international business, just to level up my education and also make sure that I didn't lose my French, because I was losing my French in Vancouver. And sure enough, I was doing a freelance design contract for a client in Vancouver with a 9-hour time difference, while also doing finals in my first semester in Bordeaux. And for about 10 days straight, I had like basically about 2000 milligrams of caffeine a day. So it's about like 7 to like 10 coffees a day. And it was so bad. And I didn't think it was that bad. Like, everyone's in North America, coffee is glorified as like, oh, this is the drug that you need to be better, be more productive. And it's a man's drink, like that, with that super machismo aspect. So eventually I'm sitting in class on a Thursday at like 11:30 a.m. and I start having like heart palpitations, and I feel like outside of my body, kind of like when you have a really bad flu, you have pins and needles everywhere. It felt like that, and I was like, but this is different. Like, I don't have I don't have a flu, I don't feel sick, but my body is like not inside my body right now. I just something, for lack of a better word, felt really fucked up. And so I went home and then basically like puked my guts out, and I was like, okay, there's something totally wrong. And I went to the doctor and he's like, you had an acute caffeine overdose. You need to get off of coffee, you got to start drinking tea, this and that. And I was like, man, I've already been down this road. I've tried like all these things, and everything's either too sweet, and if it's not sweet, it tastes like crap. And the good stuff, you have to make it at home and bring it with you. And if you're always on the run somewhere, you just can't do that. It just can't do it every day. It's too much work. So literally just a few weeks later, we're starting our second semester this is beginning of 2013 in Bordeaux. And there's a 6-month entrepreneurship program within the master's. And I've always been an entrepreneur my whole life. So I was really excited for this project. And the first day, we're looking for topics to research as a product idea, ideally something sustainable or whatever, this and that. My background was in sustainable tourism development before I went to master's. So that was always kind of where I wanted to be. And sure enough, I find this study about the coffee leaf, the Arabica coffee leaf from the Arabica coffee plant. and how it's loaded with antioxidants. There's all these really cool health properties, these really interesting compounds, good for inflammation, cholesterol, and things like that. And I was like, huh, that's really curious because I've never heard of someone using the leaf of the coffee plant. And according to the studies, it's been consumed for 300, 400 years in Indonesia and Ethiopia, where actually coffee originally came from in Ethiopia. And the locals have been drinking it as a tea, like a really rudimentary tea for hundreds of years. And it was kind of like their local secret sauce. And I just thought that was really cool. So my friend and I, who's from France, in the same group as me, we started digging into this idea, and we realized that in the coffee industry, you can only harvest the bean for 3 months, typically like December to March, depending on your elevation or your region. But that's essentially like our winter in North America is the coffee season for the actual bean in Central South America and Africa, Asia, etc. So 3 months a year, you're in business. The other 9 months, you have 10% employment, and families have to migrate, take their kids out of school. They go through an average seasonal hunger of about 3 months at the tail end of the off season because they just run out of money. Like they save up all they can for 3 months and then they try to make it last for 12. Like that's really tough, right? So we thought, well, wait a second, like if they're actually pruning off the leaves in the off season as part of their refreshing cycle for the plant, just to maintain the plant, at the same time in that off season, there's like no one is making money, no one's actually getting fed, and they have to migrate. It's like, well, why don't we actually try to take those extra prunings and craft it with, traditional tea methods? We started looking into how they make black tea and green tea, etc. It's for the most part, it's the same belief. They just process it differently. So if you're looking at, how you make beer, you can always do it differently with slightly different ingredients. But at the end of the day, there's an overall methodology, yeast and fermentation, et cetera, et cetera. And then you have a beverage. So in our case, we're like, well, the tea leaf is different from the coffee leaf, but doesn't seem that different. Why don't we try applying this method to the coffee leaf and see what happens? So we did our school project. At the end of the year, we said, screw it. I got money left on my credit card. Let's go to Nicaragua. And so we went to Nicaragua. We started backpacking coffee farms, just knocking on doors, like literally in the middle of nowhere. As like 24-year-old white kids, you're pretty naive and you just don't really care. And I've been in Nicaragua before, so I felt pretty comfortable and had like somewhat decent Spanish in the beginning. It got better, but anyways, we're backpacking farms and we start like spending the night with these farmers and drinking rum and kind of partying and hearing, all the shady background about the fair trade co-ops, organic co-ops, how these farmers get locked into deals that they just don't understand because they don't have like legal literacy. And so we're like, okay, this is crazy. And in the end, we traded a bottle of rum for a big bag of coffee leaves, and we brought that back to town where we were staying, and we started crafting it with the little knowledge that we had. We made our very first batch. We tried it, and we were so nervous because we're like, if this tastes like shit, we just spent like 9 months of our time and money that we don't have, and my credit cards are racked to shit now. And if this better work, basically, because I haven't worked in like 3 or 4 months and quit my job for this. And we tried the first sip and we're just like, oh my god, it's so smooth, like it's not bitter, whereas regular tea like black tea is very bitter, or green tea can be very grassy. And so this was pretty much Halloween 2013. At this point, we had just flown back at time for Halloween. We got out of Nicaragua with like a 17-kilo bag, which is about 40-pound bag of prepared coffee leaf tea, if you will. And yeah, then it just kind of went from there. That was just the very genesis of it. And we realized even then on the crafting method, we barely knew anything. Like we were learning what we could find in books or YouTube or whatever. And that was just the very beginning of it. And since then it has morphed and evolved and mutated many, many times.
Wow, what a story, man. I can relate to a lot of these parts as a nomad, but also as a first-time founder that founded a nootropic supplement. Okay, so let's go back in time with the story. First, yeah, you and I, we share lots in common. So me, I grew up on Nesty too, while playing video games. And
Yeah.
not only the sugar content really surprised me, although back in days I didn't give a shit, But I also discovered there was some caffeine in Nesty. Did you know that?
Yeah.
And because when I would play video games, I'd be very good, and there's an explainer for that, caffeine. Okay, that's one. Second, the Monster theoretically has great ingredients that will make you high and performant. I just think that their formula for the stomach is not digestible. And when you do that, when you impact the gut negatively, you get really, really low performance. That's two. Three, the 2 milligrams a day is completely bonkers. I nowadays, even with my current consumption, I never go over, let's call it 300 milligram. But I fully understand why you did it. Why? Because my first nootropic supplement was marketed to students. We were students back in these days, and we were selling Apex GPA. We were even selling it in BC. You might have even heard of it. The caffeine content per capsule was 100 milligram. And that's high, by the way. And so like you took what, me personally, I'm sensible to caffeine. You're probably not, for if you've gone up to
No,
2K.
I am now. And my
Okay,
body
because
like
your body's
reverted.
like, fuck you, don't ever do that to me again.
Exactly.
So me, I got high on one pill, right? Like there was I mean, these ingredients, ginkgo biloba, B6, B12, bacopa monieri. That was the first formula. The second formula we did was mostly for entrepreneurs. We went on the Quebec Dragon stand, by the way, for that one. It was called Velux, and that one had 50 milligrams, but it had more to it. What did we add there? That was quite special. Vitamin D, vitamin C, zinc for the immune system. We had a couple more. I can't remember that formula. Anyway, we shut that startup down. Bottom line, and long story short, we were selling supplements to students so that they could get high while studying instead of taking Concerta and Ritalin and all of these things, which is a better alternative indeed. And they would get like really high off these things sometimes on exams, and sometimes we would get these messages, I took one pill and I got like really high and so forth. And so I've heard about that. So first time I officially hear about a caffeine overdose though, but I believe you that at 2000 milligram, must have hit home pretty hard. To your story of you visiting Nicaragua, I mean, that's pretty bold. I have a friend that's currently doing that, like he's in Ecuador, he's coming soon in Mexico, and he's doing like fruit trade and all of these things. It's kind of interesting. Finally, for your product, I went through the ingredients list because I'm a nerd for these things, and I'm gonna say, it's pretty good. For the taste of it, I can't wait to taste, because I could very much relate when you said that black tea was bitter as a heavy tea drinker, and the grassy taste of green tea. Like my favorite green tea from Costco, it's like Sencha, the very green one. You guys have that in BC too, most probably. It's really hard. I love the hard taste on my end. I love everything that's painful, which is a weird thing for me, like as an ultra athlete. But I got used to it. And on your website, what I'd like, you did a comparison here of your product with like other brands that I see here. And basically I drink like rice when I'm in Quebec, rice kombucha. I still drink a lot of kombucha nowadays. And you said the taste is acquired. Well, I mean, even after some time, some rice really tastes like shit. Pure leaf, that is total crap. I'm just gonna share my screen so that people can see it. And the other one, I mean, Zevia I haven't tasted, but I get huge headaches when I drink stevia, because it's so hard, So I can't wait to taste it. I've seen you in some stores in Quebec. Like, what's your expansion plan there?
Quebec is pretty small right now. Like we're just kind of started opening up Quebec. But that being said, we have about 500 locations across Canada, about 400 of them being in BC, and then let's say 30 to 50 in Ontario, and the rest kind of across the prairies. But we do have a handful of stores in Quebec. I'd have to look up the names again, but we're kind of slowly building there. To be perfectly honest, that and I hate to do this because I'm also Quebecois and I want to like bring it to my people, so to speak. But the opportunity in Texas is like 10,000 times bigger.
In
So
Austin.
Yeah. So we're actually launching right now. We just launched with Central Markets, which is 10 locations. They're like in Austin, Dallas, Houston, things
Hmm.
like that. It's kind of like a high-end Whole Foods type thing.
Okay, nice.
So right now we're basically kind of saturating a bit more in Canada. We're getting some more national distribution. We're also opening up a lot of convenience and gas locations.
Hmm.
So we're at 500 stores now. Starting January 2024, we should be at least 850 locations. Those extra 350 being convenience and gas.
Hmm.
And then yeah, after that, it's really just about really strategic expansion in the US. Um, in the past, like in 2014, when we started like building this actual business based off of what we created in our first trip in Nicaragua, it was all tea bags, like, 15 tea bags in a box type of thing. We thought that was going to be the easiest way to get started because it's good shelf life. It's, the only thing you're really buying is like paper and boxes, and it feels like kind of a simpler way to kind of work out the kinks of the supply chain because no one had ever built this before. Um, and so we started with the tea bags, but after like 5 years of doing that, we realized that the category for tea bags is like super slow. It's also very, very niche. And consumers in the grocery store are only buying tea bags literally like 3 months out of the year, at best. No one's buying tea bags in mid-July. So we realized like we were always making this on ice with friends. And then also we were using SodaStream when we would like at our parties and make cocktails with it. And more, over time, people were like, dude, you got to do iced tea. And also the sparkling idea is really cool. And so we started like messing around a little bit more. And then 2017, 2018 started looking at, okay, how do we actually make this transition with the right people? Because we can't, the way that the business was set up and the team that we had, it wasn't really like we didn't have the right acumen to make sure that every move that we made was a smart move. So I went out and looked for new board members, advisors, investors, whoever that was from the ready to drink side. And I found this amazing guy who was a 25-year executive at Coca-Cola. He retired from Coke and he joined our board. The guy's just, and he's a living legend. I just love him to death. He's such a good dude. So we brought him on. We launched our first iced teas. Actually, this is one of them. This is the lemon one. It's gonna blur out. There you go.
There you go. Yeah.
And so this is like a classic
Hmm.
flat iced tea. It's not sparkling. We launched those in 2020 with just 1 gram of sugar, and
Mhm.
people were really stoked. It really hit home with like the low sugar crowd and like the real tea crowd that wanted authentic tea with real taste and not a bunch of sugar where all you're tasting is really fructose.
Hmm.
And so that was good, but we realized we're kind of missing a huge part of the market. Like people that didn't want to have like something absolutely 0 or 1 gram, just a little touch of sweetness would have been nice. So we started realizing that we changed everything to 4 grams of sugar, which was a nice move and good success. And then we finally followed our gut, and we didn't really have a whole lot of data to go off of it because sparkling tea doesn't really exist in Canada. We're the first ones to do it. There's a handful in the Southeast US that are doing it, but all of them taste really rough, like really like intense, or they have a ton of fake sugars in them. So it just tastes
Hmm.
gross. And we decided to go with the sparkling iced tea. About a year and a half ago, we launched one SKU. And then since then, over the last year, we've launched 2 more. And now it's our main focus. Like it's selling 3 times faster than the flat tea. So the flat tea, we're actually putting it on hiatus as of now, which is kind of sad because for me, it's the best. It's the best tea on the market because it's so easy to drink. It's so smooth, and but sparkling sells better. I mean, what do you want me to say? Like kids love it because it has bubbles, and it's got a nice taste, and parents love it because it's an alternative to a second, third coffee. And it is very refreshing with the sparkling. I will say it's amazing with food because it's just it like cuts the palate very well. So from like literally it's been 10 years of like starting with just the base product of like tea itself and then tea bags, and then we also did loose leaf, and then into iced teas and now sparkling iced teas. And it's been this like massive shift. And yeah, it's been painful at times, man. Obviously, like it has not been easy. But I'm happy that we're, where we're at now, and the product is just like is light years better than what it was. I wish we had done this way earlier, but hindsight's 2020.
Right. And the challenge when I was running my supplement business, was getting into stores. So who's in charge of that? How do you do that? You reach out to these folks, get on call. How do you convince them to actually order a product that they never tried on the shelves before?
Yeah, so before COVID, it was a bit different. You could just show up at head office and get a meeting with somebody. And now all these buyers are like basically just doing video calls from home. Like they work from home, they don't even want to talk to you, they're like impossible to reach. If you do get a contact, you got to email them and then they'll basically give you the address to ship samples somewhere and then they'll go pick them up or they'll have one of their staff try it and get feedback from them. So honestly, since COVID, it's just gotten way harder because like the barriers to or like the gatekeepers and the gateway to actually get to decision makers has gotten like multiple layers to it now, which is really frustrating. Um, but like there's two ways to think about it. Like you have or two different types of contacts we're trying to get for. There's like individual store managers that will run a store, a part of like a big chain, and those ones we're just hitting individually, like every day, boots on the ground. We're hitting stores in person, driving around, dropping off samples, talking to people. That's like a huge component. That's probably like 80% of the sales work that we do, at least, maybe 85, because you just have to. And even the stores that you're listed in, we have 500 locations. We try to hit all of them in person. Obviously, it's not possible. But even if one got an order a week ago and it should be all good, every time you show up to a store, there's something you got to fix. Either the product is buried somewhere in the back and it's out of stock on the shelf, but it's there somewhere and the staff don't know. They don't give a shit either. And or like, the product is there, but it's like not faced properly or has the wrong price tag. Like there's always something. There's always something, man. It's so high maintenance. It's just crazy. And I never thought it would be this high maintenance. I thought it was like, okay, pump it out into stores. The stores will just control the shelf, as they do, and it's all good. But holy crap, you got to do everyone's job for them. It's pretty exhausting. So to help us kind of like split up the work, we have a couple of small agency groups that do merchandising, or like sometimes we'll have sales brokers to go in specific regions that it's cheaper for us to just pay them and train them and then do like one visit and kind of go through the whole region with them and then let them manage it and we kind of keep tabs. That's it's expensive to do that, and also they're probably handling anywhere from 100 to 500 brands, and so you have to always keep on top of it. So this debates of like, are brokers really worth it? But yeah, like it's really like, sometimes we're just like searching through LinkedIn trying to find contacts, or using like email hunter websites where you get you get all the emails from certain businesses that you're looking to get contacts for. It's tough, but beyond that, it's really just getting it in front of people and shipping the product if you can't get an in-person meeting. And so even if like we have a community manager, she wears a bunch of hats. She's more of a back end person, and she's actually doing some sales on the road as well, in her area where she lives, because everyone in a startup needs to be a salesperson at some point. Like it has to happen. It's not optional. I really don't love doing sales. I hate doing sales, but it's also like when you get the win, it's so rewarding. And when people connect with the product, it actually gives you that fuel again. And you're like, okay, like I actually don't mind doing sales. Obviously, it's always better when you're getting a yes, but it's something that as the creative kind of branding person, it's tough for me sometimes to put on the salesman hat, because the context of like, okay, be creative, do copywriting, design this logo, make this label better, or whatever, or like do a creative campaign idea, and then automatically switch. Okay, now you got to pump out 50 emails to 50 accounts, and then call a bunch of people and hassle them. It's just like, holy shit! I feel like I'm split personality. So there's a
100%.
lot of management, lessons that I'm trying to like figure out right now myself as we scale, because it's tough when we're three people. We're going to have 900 locations coming up in January. It's just like, holy shit, how do you even cover that?
So how do you split roles with your co-founder?
So he's more finance, logistics, and then key accounts. So he'll hit like the major accounts where it's like, let's say, Loblaw City Market individually, things like Whole Foods, where like these are like the head office accounts where you just have to talk to one buyer and then it'll get it in everywhere. That's kind of what he does. He also manages a lot of the Vancouver accounts just on the ground because he lives in Vancouver. I actually live on the island. near Tofino. And so I'm doing all the island accounts, and we have different regions and we split them up like depending on location. But generally speaking, like I said, we're all doing sales in our own respective areas. But generally speaking, he's doing finance, logistics, and operations, and I'm doing marketing, branding, HR, and all the e-commerce stuff, like basically everything digital when it comes to the higher level, and even some of the nitty gritty. It's hard to like explain because there's just so many things that we have split up.
I need to stay focused here because I want to talk about that post you did 2 hours ago about fakeness on LinkedIn. But
Oh God, you saw that?
yeah,
I hate LinkedIn. I'm so over it, dude. It's the biggest ego stroke, like social climbing. Oh my God, fake pat on the back.
yeah,
Like everyone shares the good news, no one shares the bad news. And I just like every time I open it, it's just so cringe. It's
yeah,
just
yeah.
so fucking cringe, dude.
Yeah. Well, Facebook is low qual. Facebook is me. I was like only friending entrepreneurs back in the days, and it's like nowadays I open it and I see stories of Ferraris and Bentleys. So I'm not sure about Facebook either. Insta is I've never been on Insta. TikTok is like worse than ever. It's like zombies go there. And Twitter is a bit toxic, but yeah, if you would have to ask me, like Twitter would be on top. LinkedIn is cool because it's business people, so it's high IQ. But yeah, there's a lot of careerist and corporate climbers, which I also do not like. I won't use the word hate. It's not cool to hate people, at least from my end. I don't want to cultivate that, but yeah, it's really cringe. I will agree to that. Then there's the outreach problem, which leads to the point I was actually about to make before I let you share your thoughts about this LinkedIn thing. But when I closed down my nootropic business, there's two things I would have wished that I would have known. One was Amazon and Amazon ads. I wish I would have put like way more cash in there. And the second thing would be cold outreach, because nowadays I run cold outreach agency, and it's quite
Mhm.
fascinating what you can do in there. I use this tool called Apollo, and yes, not all buyers will be on Apollo, especially if it's a small business. On Apollo, what I mean is on LinkedIn, right? Because Apollo, it scrapes LinkedIn for its
Okay.
source of data. But it's quite amazing what you can do there. So highly recommend that tool. And second, for smaller businesses, I recommend a tool that's called to scrape list, right? D7. D7, what it does, it's called d7leadfinder.com. I met the guy in Playa del Carmen a couple of years ago.
Oh, nice.
And it scrapes Facebook, it scrapes Google Maps, and yeah, it provides you the info at email. So you won't be able to start your email with like, "Hey Max," it will be like, "Hey company team." But
Right.
still, it's pretty powerful. And at the small business level, most people don't notice. They think it's like personalized and stuff. So these two things, if I would have to start again, I think I could, yeah, generate a very successful product business. But I tend to stay away from product business nowadays with the shipping, the logistics, and all of that. I know how fucking hard it is.
Yeah,
By the
dude. And
way,
shipping is killing us. Like the whole
yeah,
beverage industry is, in particular, beverage, because obviously I know the space that's where I work, but everyone in our space is shipping bricks. Like you're shipping
yep,
water, it's
yep,
so heavy.
yeah,
And we're not shipping necessarily, Clase Azul bottles where it's
yeah, yeah.
$200 a pop.
There
This
you
is
go.
$30 for a case.
Yeah,
The shipping is literally just as expensive as it is for the retail price. So
yeah.
it's gotten really tough post COVID with shipping costs and stuff like that. So because of that, we've actually cut back a lot on the e-commerce, and
Mm,
we're really focusing more on stores and through distributors,
yeah.
which distributors can be challenging to work with, but at the same
Mm.
time, they cover the shipping costs, so it makes our lives a hell of a lot easier.
I'd go. I mean, it's funny that you mentioned a soul or whatever, because if I would get back in that arena, I do think I'll get back in that. Why? Because I like pain, and it's cool to hold physical products in your hand too. I still remember holding my ball. I really had a fetish with like hearing the pills ding ding ding. Um, it was good looking too, what we did back in the days. And if I would have to start again, I'd go ultra luxury. I would go.
Hmm.
I know that it would take a really long time to build that brand, but yeah, I'd start as early as possible and probably sell mezcal, but not mezcal that you drink to get drunk. Very fucking
Yeah,
expensive
for
mezcal,
sure.
like that you need to sip slowly and tell your friend that this little shot that you're sipping right there. I would sell the glass as well of because there's a special glass to drink it. I'd sell it at least $2,000 to $10,000 a bottle. And that would be one. And the second business would be these alebrijes. Not sure if you've ever been to Mexico, but there's,
Mhm.
or Oaxaca precisely. There's these wooden sculptures that are painted with dots. And these can retail for like $30,000 each. And they're light, because yeah, shipping's a fucking nightmare.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, become an art dealer.
Yeah, some kind of fancy art dealer. Okay, let's talk about LinkedIn now. Like, what do you don't like? And also, did you like the movie Barbie? Because I saw the reference at the end.
No, this is so random. I didn't expect to talk about this today on this call, but um, I don't know. I find LinkedIn is it has its purposes for finding networking and like finding buyers and like as a salesperson to build their business. Yeah, for me, that's the number one resource. Um, in terms of its like daily use, I find that it's just this huge ego stroke and like everyone's flexing on success and whatnot. And
Yeah,
call me like go ahead and you can call me a salty entrepreneur because it's tough to run a business. Um, even
very
if
tough.
even if I was a billionaire by now, it's not like I would be on LinkedIn and be like, wow, I love this platform. It's just so cringe. Like when I see it, it reminds me of that really famous clip of the Microsoft Windows 1995 launch where they're all like dancing on the stage and they're just so awkward and just like holy shit, these guys are
Windows
just
launch GIF.
it's super cringe. I'm like, that's what that platform feels like. It's like a party at Microsoft Office headquarters, and you're like,
Oh, Gates is such a
cool.
fucking nerd. I
No, so
really love Gates. Jumping
it
the chairs though is like that's his best.
but like yeah, I find it, I don't know, I just find LinkedIn is like so corny. It just hurts. It hurts to see how corny it is. And I know that there's a use for it, but it's so random. I didn't expect to talk about that today. And I think what I said was like everyone's sharing the Barbie version of their like their business life or their entrepreneurial story. Instagram is kind of the same, but more of a personal life, generally speaking, where everything is super fake. It's all polished and plastic, and like, look how perfect my life is. And as like a an entrepreneur that knows that even for these people to reach this certain point, there's a lot of shit that they went through that, but they're not sharing that. I'm not telling them they have to share that if they don't want to. I just feel like the whole idea of the platform is just become this like really corpo fucking dry clinical space where it's all just fake handshakes and fake smiles and I don't know, I just for me it's
Yeah.
just so cringe. I can't stand using it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, first part of a good part of society is that, right? It's not just LinkedIn. Second, I can picture the Goldman Sachs, like I've got a new job that would probably be the strongest corporate climbers. Although I do interview like ex Goldmans as founders because yeah, I think they're somewhat they have an interesting background. Study these companies as well. Yes, there's a lot of cringe, lots to learn too. Um, then who's the founder of LinkedIn? It's Reid Hoffman. Reid. The pronouns thing they added on LinkedIn, that's a bit weird, and then you speak with people like they think it's important to mention that they need to be called he him. That's my cringe. That's at least my definition of cringe. Like where did that effort come from? Do we absolutely need to have that there, or is it like a corporate cringe, just like the companies that put LGBT in their logos when it's pride and they don't give a shit, they actually do it because everyone does it. This is like more my type of contrarian thoughts on LinkedIn. Then
Mm-hmm.
obviously I see these posts all the time. um I think that if you write to the algorithm, I don't want to see that, you don't see them, so I don't see it since a while. um Me, I treat my LinkedIn like a Twitter, so I post quite a lot, so the algorithm doesn't like me. and I post really real shit that is good and bad. But if you want to see my dark side, you'll need to go to Twitter. That's where I complain. That's
I'm,
where I take all my toxic shit and I dump it there. But I
I'll
kind of
check it
stopped
out.
doing that because it was getting really bad. I would call it like my alter ego. Um and I don't give a shit if I'm getting canceled. I think it's important not necessarily to express myself, although it helps me think and forge an opinion on things, but just to see my evolution. Because truth be told, I'm dumb on a lot of topics, right? Even me saying this he, him thing or they on LinkedIn, I'm not sure like if that's even relevant thinking about it right now. I need to speak and write to understand these things, but how would you change that? If you were like the CEO of LinkedIn, I forgot what his name is, the CEO of LinkedIn, but what would you change there? And what's your thought on the LGBT things? Like me, my opinion is that I think it did like a lot of progress, mostly good thing, but I think a lot of these causes, same thing with Black Lives Matter and all of that, I think it got perverted for money. A lot of people are making money on the back of that. And I'm never comfortable when it's like, yeah, we do it. But why? If you dig in the deep why, it's to get cash, all these consultants, these diversity consultants and so forth. So I have a problem with dishonesty. So yeah, that's my opinion. What do you think?
So three things there. One, LinkedIn, what would I change? I think I think regardless, there's nothing I could actually change. People are still going to post, you know, only the good news. And I think that's just part of every platform. I don't see that changing at all, especially because this is related to career and because in modern day, especially North America, you're so judged based on your career and status and all that bullshit that in other countries or, in other times it didn't matter, and for some people it doesn't matter, which it shouldn't. But for the primarily people still judge you based on career success. So no matter what, that is always going to be an ego thing, and people are afraid to share the tough stories on LinkedIn. So that just won't change, even if I change the platform. Maybe you can encourage people to share more genuine stories and real challenges and conflict, but I still don't think people would change. The second thing in terms of pronouns, I think honestly, in the English language, we are, and also in the French language as well, we are way behind when it comes to more collectively addressing people like is the royal we, the global we. In Spanish, it's obviously there's conjugations and adjectives you have to edit based on female, male, etc. But I find that generally speaking in Spanish, in the communities and the way that you speak just in the street with friends, it's always more like the royal we, are like you don't say vosotros in Latin America, you say more in Spain. But in Latin America, you can kind of cut all that out and it's implied that it's like everybody. Or if it's just
Yeah.
you, you're kind of pointing at the person. So you're not even really using pronouns that much in at least the Spanish and Central America, where it's like really stripped down and it's like slang.
And I hate the
Um,
vouvoiement in French. That's another thing. It's
yeah,
like
that
give me
yeah,
respect even before knowing me just because I'm older, your teacher, sort of.
yeah.
I
It's
have a
like
trauma with that.
it's like being a little almost over polite because it's very royal kind of style, like it's old school, or like almost like empirical style. But generally speaking, I think pronouns in North America, people that are upset about it, it's like, you know what? You're not the one who has to go through and tell everybody your pronouns because you've had to go through this own challenge yourself and come out to yourself or realize that you're not comfortable the way that you currently are, and that this maybe there's something else going on. Like being an LGBT person, I came out after my hockey career because I couldn't
Mm,
come out during my hockey career. There's no fucking way.
yeah.
I would get ostracized by everybody. It would basically just end up in my career.
Oh yeah.
And I had to wait till I was 26, I think.
Mm,
No, 20, yeah, 26 years old, which is really late considering I'm born in 1988. And like the amount of shit that we have to deal with internally just to get to
mm,
a point where we can actually talk about our specific chemistry that we struggle with,
mm.
or we struggle with because of societal pressures. It drives me crazy, and people get like all pissed off, like, oh, yo, what are you gonna do? Tell me your pronouns now? It's like, maybe I fucking will. Is that you realize like you think this is such a massive inconvenience for you. You realize that this is something that I've had to fuck with my entire life, and like really uncomfortable situations all the time, and tons of trauma and tons of hiding. Even when I go to conferences now, okay, I'll give you a great example. I go to conferences now, even in my small town. I live in a small town, half of it's rural blue collar fishermen, right?
Yeah.
Or if I'm in a trade show at LA, I meet someone new, they shake your hand, whatever, shoot the shit, and they say, "Oh yeah, you have a wife?" I'd be like, "No, I have a partner, and they work in design, and they love to do this, and I go do this. I go do this with them on weekends." I have to say they all the time because I'm hiding it that it's actually
Right.
that it's actually a male, and I'm basically my fiance is a guy, and I can't say that because these American Republican businessmen might automatically cut off any opportunity with us because they don't want to deal with a gay guy.
Yeah,
And
that's
now,
fair.
and then also even in town, I'm at the local bar, and bartender tries to like back me up and actually outs me to this like super hardcore redneck local who's been here forever. And I realized like an hour later, that same dude who now knows that I'm gay goes out and tries to like scrap this guy in the parking lot, and I'm just like
Scrap? What do you mean scrap?
oh, like fight this other random dude. He was just like a drunk guy, right? And it's just like now when I go meet new people, like people don't realize like, oh, well, you came out 10 years ago, like whatever, you're out, it's fine, like no one cares. And it's like you realize every time I meet someone new,
Yeah.
I have to decide if I trust them enough to tell them about my real life.
Right.
I'm in the closet for every new contact, every single
Mm.
new contact, and people don't understand that today. Like if and I empathize with you with like the general straight population because you haven't had to go through it.
Right.
So I get it that it's hard to understand that, but you have to try to think what it's like. You're literally hiding your whole life,
Right.
and you're having to still come out as an adult fucking until the end of time. And I have to make sure that I'm comfortable with the people I'm talking to about this, because it
Mm.
could backfire really badly. And so to go back on your question of like the pronoun thing and this and that,
Yeah.
dude, like just let people fucking choose what they want to do, what they want to be with their life, because
Yeah.
that little inconvenience of like you being like, oh shit, I need to they them. It's like, do you realize how tiny that is compared to the struggle they've had, and
Yeah.
like the emotional issue, and also the how do I say, like the lost opportunity of just having more confidence of being out there. Like it really cuts down your ability to go seek things because you don't have, like, you feel like you're going to get ostracized everywhere you go.
Yeah.
And
My
I'm
problem's not with that, just for
oh
clarification.
yeah, no, I don't think it is, but I know from a tech perspective it can be
Yeah.
complicated.
Me, it's more the folks that write he, him just to show that they're on trend and
Oh,
they're
it's
woke. So
performative. Yeah.
they're straight, right? And
Hmm.
they're like, yeah, I'm gonna use it because everyone uses it. That's my problem. Your struggle, 100 fucking %. I mean, it's hard. It's really
I
tough.
know what you mean. Yeah, it's like people just do it to like kind of greenwash, their persona. And you mentioned also like companies putting like the pride flag during June and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like there's some, obviously I'm glad that it's happening. Like I can't take anything away from that. But there's
Yeah.
definitely elements, like the best example is like the Vancouver Pride Parade, where now the Pride Parade is like only banks and like these super corporate things. And there's this hilarious meme. You know that meme? It's like the anime cartoon, and there's that guy with like a butterfly in the air, and he looks at this and he's like, looks at the butterfly, and it's like a pride, like basically like the gays, and it's like, oh, is this a income stream? Is this a new marketing tactic? It's like, yeah, okay, look, you look at us as like some fucking cash cow. You don't look at us as human beings. And it's definitely a lot of rainbow washing and just people kind of playing the game to kind of you know be current and say that they're doing something. But in
Hmm.
the end, like, are they actually donating? Are they doing anything positive? Like most cases, probably not.
Right. The thing with my mind that is not good is that I'm a contrarian and I'm seeking to unveil dishonesty, even if it's not going to be beneficial for the whole all the time. That's what I'm realizing. Or maybe my role is just to call out people. I don't want to be that guy either. It's just
I
that
don't.
I've
I
shaped my
agree with
mind.
you.
for contrarian because it brings so much cash and in business when you're contrarian, you know, when you see things that other don't, it also makes you interesting, but that's very egotistic, right? But
it's a cynical view on things, and
but
I don't know if it's
I'm a positivist too. Like I'm an optimist. It's a weird mix. I'm not cynist at all. I see things and I see problems and then I try to fix them. And I haven't thought about a solution for this one. Well, actually, I thought about one while you were speaking for the he, him, they thing. What about like just supporter? I think that would be like,
or ally, yeah.
yeah, ally. Hmm.
But then everyone can just tag that too and just say that, oh look, I this and that, whatnot.
Yeah.
It's like, for example, like I saw a local grocery chain. We don't sell in the chain, so I have no skin in that game. But local grocery chain was like, oh, like, next time you're here, donate to this cause at the till. And it's like, why don't you donate? Like,
Right.
we are getting raped with grocery prices
Yeah.
as
Yeah. Yeah.
regular citizens right now. Like,
Oh yeah.
prices are completely out of control. We're barely
Mm,
surviving as general public. And you're asking me to now donate for you, basically. It's like,
mhm,
if you would at least do a matching donation, or you say, hey, look, we put 10 million into this thing, or 500 grand, whatever,
mm.
and then if you want to throw in a couple bucks, we're happy to offer that opportunity. But they're like, make sure you donate to this cause at the till. And it's like, you know what, dude? Why don't you lead the way and actually donate on your own accord? Or
Mm.
maybe they did donate and they just didn't communicate that. And then,
Yeah.
that's my cynical side, ripping a company that actually doing something really good. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I find it so frustrating where it's like a lot of companies put the onus on the consumer to
Mm.
make all the change.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, consumers need to stop buying XYZ product because it's bad for the earth. It's like, why don't you guys stop selling it? Why don't you
Yeah.
guys change it? Why don't you guys adapt it, even if it's a bit more expensive, but it's more sustainable? People will
Right.
still, if they're forced to make the shift, they will do that. Right
Yeah.
now, we're paying through the nose for the same, for even lower quality of the same products we had before COVID. I
It's
don't mind
fucked.
paying more if the quality will be at least the same but more sustainable. So it's the corporate system is just getting really, really
And it's not
awful.
just it's not just like supermarkets, even the farmers market, like I would go to these farms and they would have outrageous prices. There's a problem there, and yeah, people need to do stuff about it. And when I hear you, I don't hear cynicism. I hear contrarianism. I see someone that's talking about something that is not talked about. And without this, I don't think we can grow intellectually as fast, without seeing the problems. And I've been pissed the last 2 days. I think I told you that with the dogs, Normally I'm all happy jolly. So I can like have more empathy with that. But do you think the world is fucked, generally speaking, or do you think we're moving the right direction?
Oh my god, that's like a whole nother podcast.
In less than 3 minutes. Let's
Yeah,
just
no, of
off.
course, of course. I'd say, oh man, I don't know. There's days, I'd say more often than not, part of me is just like, world's fucked. Like, the environment is crumbling. Yeah, companies aren't doing shit to solve it. Consumers are trying, but also there's a huge education gap, and there's also a big follow through problem. Like, there's a lot of armchair environmentalism, and like, we're all culprits of it. I'm not going to be able to do a protest every single week somewhere else. It just doesn't work. I have to work to eat and live, etc. Um, I feel like late stage capitalism is seriously having an effect now. Like, it's worse than it's ever been. The last 30 years have been the slowest economic growth in history, or at least in the modern world. So we're dealing with a shit economy. The environment is imploding, and there's really not a whole lot happening that's helping. On the flip side, even though some of the human rights are getting stripped away in the US because of political pendulum, as usual, generally speaking, I feel like human rights and general awareness, mental awareness, social awareness has improved, and it is getting better. I'd say in that space specifically, it is getting way, way, way better. General human rights and awareness, and like sensitivities and cultural sensitivity, and like having an understanding of what you do affects the people around you. I think that has grown a lot more. And kids these days are like super aware and they're just really, really in tune. Whereas boomers, they don't give a shit. They say racist shit all the time. And you're like, oh my God, there goes another one. But when it comes, in that space, I feel like we're getting a lot better as a society. But when it comes to the actual like physical things going on in the world, when it comes to capitalism basically eroding the middle class and the lower class, and it's all going to topple at some point because these companies need people to buy stuff. And if you kill your consumer, who's going to buy it? So I feel like there's an element there where like the greed will go so far that in the end it just has to crumble, so to speak. But I don't know. We'll see if there's like this giant economic crash. I feel like the next 2 years is going to be rough, but I don't think we're going to go through a massive crash like we probably should because we're overdue. But yeah, like I don't know. There's kind of two sides of the coin there.
I think we are gonna go through a massive crash in the next. I mean, my non-optimist is predicting 8 to 12 months. It will be AI caused, by the way.
Oh yeah, it's killing so many jobs. Crazy.
Yeah, that is a huge tsunami, mega tsunami coming, and no one's talking about that. Environment, I've seen, and yeah, just the optimist for that AI, it's aka like people keeping their job for longer would be like 18 to 24 months, something like that. The environment side, I've seen a lot of change happening this year. I've interviewed lots of green techs. There's so much money in there. It has become, and that's a good side of, well, not the perversion of the cause, okay, but people, even if they're faking it, even if they're following the bandwagon, everyone is talking about green stuff right now.
Mm-hmm.
So Larry Fink, this ultra capitalist guy, he invented DSG, and now it's super trendy, it's like mandatory. So I think we've seen the pendulum shift there, but obviously there's other forces at play. For example, I'm having a data PhD soon, and she's saying that GPT and AI is consuming tons of energy and causing carbon emissions and so forth. So as we're improving, there's also these challenges.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure we're gonna solve them though. So yeah, that's my quick take on it, and it was really a pleasure to have you on, Max. Thank you for the candor. I love that. I get a lot of folks, unfortunately, that do still think that podcasts are about pure PR stunts. Fucking hate that. I'm gonna use the word hate here. Don't hate me for it. But yeah, that was very cool, man. And I'd like to have you on again, like in 6 to 7 months in 2024. Where can people find out more about you until then?
Yeah, drinkwize.com. Wise spelled with a Z, like just like that. The website's the best place to check out the product and whatnot. And our social handles are drinkwise on Instagram, etc. That's probably the easiest place. If you're in Canada and the West Coast in particular, hit up Save on Foods, IGA, Nestor's Choices, like major kind of healthy grocery stores. But yeah, no, it's honestly, thanks for reaching out. This is really fun. And I really appreciate this conversation because this wasn't about just my whole company and just like, again, like another LinkedIn post, but in a podcast format. I like talking about it because it's part of my life, but also I'd rather talk about broader topics and things that actually, you need to think about versus just me spilling a bunch of stats and figures and whatnot.
Right. Well, I appreciate the compliment here. I think it's just important to talk about all of these things. They're all interrelated, by the way. In the end, capitalism is intertwined with pretty much everything nowadays. So if you don't talk about one thing, I think you're missing out on some revenues. That's one. And second, I think it's just boring just to talk about money. Like you and I, we've been in business for quite a while. I think we maxed out the serotonin in some areas, So I think it's cool to talk about like other stuff. And yeah, that's a cool angle to the pod. I feel CEOs need to talk about these things and be more creative. And one of the main goal of that pod is like to generate brain cells, and if I was successful at doing that or generating serotonin and fun, I think I did my job. Another goal is to almost be like a day at the spa, right? Or a day at that therapy, quote unquote. I need to make you feel good and have fun and kind of release I mean, I have some anger sometimes, and I need to talk about it. And the pod's really therapeutic. So yeah, I was glad to to have you on and vent out on these things. Hope you did have a bit of venting out too, because yeah, there's these problems and we need to talk about them. And yeah, thank you for coming on. That was the CEO Wisdom Podcast.com, guys. And if you want to start scale, be invited to pod. That would be podpar.com. That was Max Rivet, everyone.